Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 20th of January of 2024. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And once again we are going to start with Kiev, with Zelensky, who once again will repeat the same thing that we have already discussed. Zelensky on US support for Ukraine. I think they could give us even more to win. You won't be able to survive without the United States of America. Very interesting, because today we got probably the reply or the answer to Zelensky from the United States of America. Let's move to this country. We have a lot of updates from this territory, and the reply was like following. The White House warned Congress that Ukraine would be defeated within weeks or months unless Washington provided new military aid to Kiev. So it's very difficult to understand what does it mean, like within weeks or months. Obviously, I think that it doesn't mean that we are talking about, let's say hundreds of weeks or something like this. I believe that according to Washington, the Ukraine will be defeated within the next month or two or something like this. So let's say from 2 to 8 weeks if Washington will not provide the military aid to Ukraine. But all these things are just speculations, and probably the destiny of Ukraine has been already reserved by the powers in the world, because today we got very interesting note from the head of the Blackwater. I believe you know who is Blackwater, what is Blackwater, and the head of this, the owner or head of this, the creator of this private military campaign company told us that Ukraine will be defeated, and this is like as must. The Ukrainians will be defeated, and there is no doubt about this. And also he added that the biggest damage, the heaviest damage Ukraine will receive during the final stage of the special military operation of the conflict. So as I understand now, it's not the final stage, but we are about to enter the final stage when the Ukrainians will be defeated and when they're gonna have significant damage from the Russian forces. And you know that another important thing, that we can split the entire Ukraine army, Ukraine authorities in two parts. Those who are not responsible for anything, these are people who was mobilized, were captured, some were using the Ukrainian F-16 truck, F-16 bus to mobilization or something like this. And these guys, they're not yes, they were on the front line, probably they were killing the Russian soldiers during the clashes and so on, but they're not responsible for this because they were forced to do this. And another part of Ukrainians are those who are responsible for current situation. And you know that there is like words that the rats start running from the ship the first. So that's why I believe that at some moment, even before significant damage to Ukraine, we're going to see the process of, let's say, of immigration, of leaving of Ukraine with significant number of people, authorities, powers like lawyers, police, courts, judges, and the military authorities, recruiters and commanders, officers, who will start just running for Ukraine because they understand if they are captured, they will be even maybe tortured, not even by the Russians, but even by their own people, like those who will blame them for the situation in Ukraine. Now we are moving to Kiev, because another interesting words we got today from Zelensky, from the president of Ukraine. We see that probably he start understanding everything that take place. He is waiting for the military aid, but he understands that there are going to be no military aid. Probably Joe Biden will lose the president elections. Probably Donald Trump is going to become a next president of the United States of America. So that's why Zelensky today asked Trump to Kiev to stop the war in 24 hours. Donald Trump, I invite you to Ukraine, to Kiev. And if you can stop the war in 24 hours, I think that is enough to come to Kiev. Come any day. So from one side, this is something like an attempt to find connections and roads with possibly the future Washington administration or something like this. But anyway, this is another, let's say, episode of a very, very bad situation in Ukraine. Furthermore, the head of office of Ukraine, Yermak, reported that the counteroffensive, taking into account the means available to Ukraine, was quite successful. So up to 200,000 losses that took place during the Robotina battle, Vremivka tactical bridgehead battle, Georgyevka battle, is quite well effective and successful counteroffensive according to the Ukrainian understanding of the situation. Now we are moving to the ground, and we are going to move the most important area. We are going to talk once again about Avdiivka. During the day we got significant number of geolocations, updates, reports, messages, telegram messages, sources on the ground, reliable and unreliable resources, and all of them, including pro-Russian, pro-neutral, pro-Ukrainian, pro-Chinese, pro-Japanese, German, pro-world sources, everybody are saying just one thing: the Ukrainian defense in the southern part of Avdiivka was collapsed. The Ukrainians were defeated and are withdrawing their positions and retreating to the central part of the city, of the stronghold. As you can see, I tried to collect, let's say, as many as possible, let's say, post geolocations from different mappers, trying to understand the progress and where exactly and what exactly the Russians managed to achieve. To understand the situation, we need to add a few tactical or strategical points or strongholds in this area. The first one is the defense belt stronghold by the name of Skatovataya. This is the fortification area that located to the southwest of Vinogradnik area and industrial zone. The second stronghold, the second main base of the Ukrainians, is the Tsarskaya Okhota fortification, and this is the let's say fortification that lays on this Sabornaya Street. Then we have two more strongholds on the south. The first one is Cheburashka stronghold. This is Cheburashka stronghold. And the final, let's say, edge of southern fortification belt is the former air defense base. This is the last defense belt and defense stronghold of Ukrainian forces on the southern outskirts of Avdiivka. So 4 strongholds. Also, during the day, we got updates about the streets. We need to add them on the map as well. We have Chernyshevskaya Street. This is the first street. The Russians were saying they managed to enter. We have Sportivnaya Street. This is Sportivnaya Street. And we have Sabornaya Street. This is Sabornaya Street. So, and Sabornaya Street, as you can see, starts somewhere at Tsarskaya Okhota, let's say on the edge of Avdiivka. Furthermore, we have few streets on the northern flank, and we are talking about Kirova Street. This is the Kirova Street. And we have Livanevskaya Street. This one. So let's start, and let's start from the beginning. According to information we have, yesterday in the evening we got reports that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish control or even to enter the 9th quarter. This one, but by the evening of 20th of January, after a day of updates and speculations, we haven't received any confirmation of that fact. So we will remove this arrow. Very likely there were no attacks, and maybe the Russians were trying to make something like a psycho operation, a brains operation, trying to, let's say, to break the Ukrainian minds and to force them to, let's say, to lose in their minds, or to make them feeling that the Ukrainian forces are encircled or something like this. Rybory, for example, the Russian military expert, reported that the Russians somehow managed to enter the Livanevskaya Street and this Kirova Street and to establish a stronghold and foothold in this area. By the, let's say, evening of 20th of January of 2024, before I start making this video, we still haven't received even a single geo confirmation or even post or telegram message that confirmed this information. So that's why I believe that there were no such attack from the Russian side. Now we are moving to the south, and we are going to talk about this territory. Let's start from, move from the top to the south and try to discuss every single icon. We have updates that from the Russian sources, from the more or less reliable Russian sources, in the southern coverage of Avdiivka, storm assault groups made their way through the Tsarskaya Okhota recreation center along Sabornaya Street in Avdiivka. We have gained a foothold. That was a report from the Russian side. So, according to that report, the Russians managed to move along Sabornaya Street, capture the stronghold of Tsarskaya Okhota, and to enter Sabornaya Street. So this was the first update we got somewhere at 10 a.m. of the local time. Also at 6 p.m. of the local time, we have update that the Russians did enter Sabornaya Street and continue clashes and continue movement along this area. So we have like 2 confirmations of Russian progress around that was about Sportivnaya Street. This is Sportivnaya Street. So we have 1 confirmation of movements on Sabornaya Street, and we have at least 1 confirmation of Russian enter in Sportivnaya Street. So these like 2 streets were under Russian control, or there were Russian movements were spotted in this area. Furthermore, we have confirmation from the Ukrainian sources, and according to Ukrainians, according to this young woman who fights in the lines of Ukrainian army, she reported that the situation is very difficult on the southern part of Avdiivka, and the situation is very difficult on the northern part, because the Russians during the day launched two offensive operations during the previous 48 hours. Let's call it like this. The Russians breakthrough penetrated the Ukrainian defense belt in Tsarskaya Khota Skatovata area, and the Russians entered attack from Kamyanka. And when talking about Kamyanka, this is the village that located on the northeast of Avdiivka, to the south of Veselye and to the south of Krasnogorovka. This is the area this woman was talking about. So we have also some confirmation from the deep state map, pro-Ukrainian one, that confirms the Russian progress from the north. So according to that piece of news, the Russians are moving something like this, and the main purpose of their attack is to get the Blue Lakes. This is the Blue Lakes, this water reservoir somewhere in the central part, and the main purpose of this attack, according to most of the experts and our understanding, is to establish control at least over this territory and to collapse the Ukrainian defense somewhere in the vicinity of the stronghold that lays to the south of Kamyanka. This is the stronghold that is still under Ukrainian control, and the main purpose of the Russians was and is to collapse this area and to force the Ukrainians to step back. So currently there are Ukrainians. The Russians are moving to the south, and their main purpose is to cut this road and to force the Ukrainians to step back. We don't know whether the Russians managed to do this or not, but this is like the information that confirmed by both sides. Attack from Kamyanka. Now we are moving to the south, and we're moving to the next update. Rybar also reported and confirmed about the progress in Tsarskaya Khota and about the clashes and establishing control over this Skatovata stronghold and fortification belt. This is Skatovata. This is the small village or some residential area. As you can see, there are a lot of trenches, and basically that was the first defense belt that was collapsed by the Russians as a result of attack through the fields, or maybe along the railways, but we have this confirmation, and for now even no single geolocation of that. But anyway, other Russian sources try to add some like approximate area of updates that we were receiving. So this is pink color, show us the area of approximately the area of Russian operations, of Russian attacks and Russian progress. And later during the day we got an Syriac update, but he published his update somewhere at 2 a.m. of the local time, so it's almost a day ago, and that was like the first updates about first Russian progress, that Ukrainians withdraw their positions, retreated, and so on. And during the day we got from different mappers different updates, and the most important idea is that the Ukrainians retreating and running away. So if we summarize everything, if we summarize more or less like updates, and we can say that according to information we have, this is the real Russian progress during the previous 24 hours or maybe 48 hours or something like this. As you can see, significant advantage of the Russian forces. Of course, the Russians haven't managed to establish entire control over Chernyshevskovo or Sportivno or Saborная Street, but it's very likely that there are currently very heavy clashes, because obviously the thing that Ukrainians must do is to drop and redeploy as many as possible forces to slow down the Russians, to stop them and to counterattack. This is the vital question for the Ukrainians, not just because of reputation losses, because reputation currently means nothing. The most important thing and the most important part of this defense belt is of course Cheburashka fortification area and former air defense base, because if the Russians are able to develop their foothold and attack further along Sportivная, Saborная, Chernyshevskovo Street like this, if the Russians are able to dig in deeper, to repel and to repel every single Ukrainian upcoming attack, then the Ukrainians forces that currently located in this area, in the former air defense belt and the Cheburashka stronghold, will be encircled. I'm not saying that there are a lot of soldiers, but probably 100 or maybe 50 soldiers can be encircled, and this is a very big disaster and media loss for the Ukrainians. So that's why the Ukrainians need to counterattack the Russian forces in their new gains, to slow down them, to stop them, and to stabilize the main supply road and support road that goes from Cheburashka and former aviation base to the 9th quarter. This line, they need to secure this area. They need to win some time. Obviously, this territory will be captured within a day. But during the next 2-3 hours, and maybe right now, the Ukrainians need to secure this road and to give the secured pass for the soldiers to retreat, because they can't lose them. It's like every single soldier currently is countable. And obviously, if the Russians manage and have possibilities to dig in deeper, obviously we understand that very soon, within the next 48 hours, we're going to receive update that Ukrainians left this territory or will leave this territory, and the Russians will establish complete control. And this is going to be a complete disaster for Ukraine, for Zelensky, and for everything that happens in this area. The Ukrainians' spirit will fall down, obviously, after such a defeat and loss, and after that, the situation can develop in, let's say, unknown direction. And I'll remind you one more time, the thing that we need always to keep in our mind, that the Western countries have started or planning to start the biggest NATO military exercises on the border with Ukraine. And I'll remind you one more time that the most important goal of these exercises is not to show the Russians their muscles and so on. They're planning to concentrate 90,000 soldiers in the western part of Ukraine as a plan B. If everything goes so bad in Avdiivka, in Novomikhailivka, Robotyne, the NATO countries need to have forces to enter the western part of Ukraine. And now we see that everything develops exactly according to this scenario. Now we are moving to the South Donetsk direction, and we have also a lot of updates. The Russians continue their storming operation of Georgyevka. We have the Russian attacks and the Russian storming process of Ukrainian edge positions in this area. On this video, for example, we can see how the Russians managed to discover Ukrainian positions, and as a result of artillery fire, they just tried to suppress and destroy the building where the Ukrainians had their temporary, let's say position. The most important part of this video is this video allow us to geolocate the edge positions of Ukrainian forces on this direction. So the Russians continue, and we see that more or less this front line corresponds to the reality. When talking about Novomikhailivka, we haven't received almost anything. Of course, there are clashes. We see a small operational pause, or maybe everybody are focused in Avdiivka, so that's why we don't know what exactly is happening there. But the thing we have is the Russian FAB 1500 strike against the coal mine. This is the video, and just a second we're gonna see explosion, very heavy explosion. The Ukrainians use these two strongholds, these two constructions as the raiders, or let's say I don't know, some points, not sniper, but viewpoints and something like this. And the Russians, of course, if they want to continue offensive operation, this area first of all needs to suppress these positions of the Ukrainian forces. Now we are moving to Artyomovsk, Bogdanovka direction. We have a lot of updates from this territory as well. For example, very interesting situation develops on the south of Ivanovska. On this video, for example, we can see, at least according to the Russian author, of this video, that Ukrainians, after very heavy clashes, bombings, attacks from the Russian side, took a decision to retreat and to withdraw their positions. On this video, we see how armored personnel carrier arrived to Ukraine positions. The Ukrainians landed on this track and start running away. So according to this video, currently this stronghold is in the gray zone because the Ukrainians left and abandoned their positions. If you remember, according to some resource sources, the Russians have already established control at least over this territory, but we don't have any geolocated confirmation of that. And now, as I understand, the next stronghold, the next stage of Russian offensive operation, it was abandoned by the Ukrainians. So very likely that within the next 48 hours, we're going to receive updates that the Russians, as a result of another offensive operation, managed to establish control over this territory because this territory was abandoned by the Ukrainians. So we'll keep our eye on this area, and I think that something like this is going to happen. And if it happens, the Russians will be able to cut the Ukrainian defense belt between Ivanovsk and Klishchiivka at least in two parts, and then they will be able to handle with every single one separately. When talking about Bogdanovka, we have also lots of updates. We have already discussed the video of establishing of Russian flag. This event took place not today, not this night. This is something like maybe a few days long old video, because if you remember, just a day ago we discussed the video of Ukrainian FPV drone strike, and this is exactly the video when the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian positions. This is the Russian flag that was established, and we discussed this video on the 18th of January. So today we just got the once again geolocated confirmation from the Russian side of Russian flag in this area. Also, we got update about the edge positions of the Ukrainians. As you can see on this video, the Russian Española FPV drone operators attacked the Ukrainian positions on the edge position of Bogdanovka, which confirms more or less Russian progress. Maybe you heard, but a lot of Russian resources started spreading the piece of news that the Russians established complete control over Bogdanovka, but that was speculation. Don't believe that. It was like unreliable resource published this information, so just bypass it and don't believe it. Also, we have video from the Ukrainian side in Bogdanovka. The Ukrainians published the video of wounded soldiers, and the Ukrainians, the author of this video, while making this video, was telling us that we are all wounded and shell-shocked here, and so the situation is very difficult. And maybe if Bogdanovka still hasn't fallen, according to this video, we understand that soon this is going to happen. At least the central part will fall very soon, and the Russians will be able to improve their position further to the central part of this village. The clashes in this area continues. We expect more updates within the next few days. We haven't received anything from Solidar direction, the same story about Liman, and now we are moving to the second area of Russian very heavy offensive operation to Kislovka, Kotlarovka, Krakhmalny, Novosilovska, Berestovaya direction. First of all, I would like to show you that I have updated the map in Yahidne. We have geolocated confirmation of Russian progress, the Russian offensive operation, and as a result of that attack, the Russians got control over the tree lines, trenches, fortifications. The Ukrainians were bombing the Russians, but it didn't help them. And now we are moving to this another interesting area. Today we got update in the morning that the Russians launched an offensive operation in direction of Krakhmalny. We discussed this yesterday. We got this report, as I remember, from Rybor. Rybor reported, yes, it was Rybor reported the Russians launched an offensive operation, that the Russians managed to establish physical control or fire control over the main roads N26, N20, N26, this one that connects, let's say, Kislovka, Kotlarovka with Berestovaya. That road was cut off by the Russians, and today the Ukrainians launched a counter-offensive, and the Ukrainians published the video of counter-attack with Bradley and significant number of Ukrainian stormtroopers that were moving along the trenches. On this episode we might see the heads of Ukrainians who were moving along. So anyway, this battle ended in Ukrainian favor, at least this one, and the Russians were forced to step back from the road and to return back to the forest that located on the Russian side of the railways and so on. But during the Ukrainian attacks, the Russians were bombing heavily the Ukrainian forces who were heading to the Russian position with flamethrower systems, obviously a significant number of losses, and basically during the counter-attacks and during the clashes for the road, the Ukrainians had significant losses, and basically they wasn't ready for further clashes in this direction. And after a small, very short and fast regrouping, the Russians launched another wave of attack, but as a result of the second attack, the Ukrainians were forced to step back from the village by the name of Krakhmalny. And before we start making this video, according to incoming information, the 103rd Territorial Defense Brigade of Ukrainian was knocked out from Krakhmalny. The settlement came under the control of Russian armed forces. So, according to information we have, the Russians established complete control, and you know that this is not something that surprised me, because during this week we got a lot of updates from this territory, and I'll remind you that just on the 15th of January we were talking that the Ukrainians started redeployment of 103rd Brigade, Territorial Defense Brigade, to the combat line because of very, very bad situation, because of heavy losses and so on, and the Ukrainians start sending their soldiers exactly in direction of Krakhmalny, Kislovka, Kotlarovka, in this area. And the thing is that maybe that was like attempt to save the situation, to stabilize the front line. Maybe that was rotation process, I don't know, but I see that exactly during this, let's call it rotation process, the Russians counterattack the newly arrived forces of 103rd Brigade, and this brigade, the forces of this brigade were completely new to this area, and they were defeated, and now the Ukrainians have another hole in their defense on the Kupiansk direction. So we'll follow the situation. We're gonna receive obviously more updates, and if the Russians did manage to establish control over Krakhmalny, sooner or later we're gonna receive more geolocated updates from this territory. Now we're moving to Robotina, Zaporozhye area. We don't have anything from this direction, just regular activity, but because of like progress of the Russian forces all over the combat line, I expect that soon we're going to receive something from this direction as well. And when talking about Krynky, The Russians reported that their FPV drone operator that we were talking about yesterday survived, and we have information that the Russians started hunting this Madyar, this person who's responsible. He's like Uday from the Ukrainian side. Uday and let's say that Solomon had on their number lots of like losses from the Ukrainian side on their in their diaries, and this is the same person from the Ukrainian side, and according to information we have, this is the target number one for the Russians. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you that we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.